I'd like to call this budget work session meeting to order. I'd like to invite everybody for a moment of reflection, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. Just a little announcement, this board meeting will be broadcast over Comcast 28 and Verizon Fios Channel 32 and our live stream on our district website, as well as being recorded for future broadcast. Just some more housekeeping as a public notice. I'll just go ahead and read it out. Bensalem Township School Directors will meet in special session on the following dates for the consideration of the 2022-2023 annual school district budget for the fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2022. Tuesday, May 24th. Tuesday, June 28th. Then the budget work session meetings will be February 28th. March 28th, April 28th, and May 24th.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good evening, everyone, and welcome. Appreciate the opportunity to share a few remarks in advance of Mr. Steffi's budget work session presentation. I'm pleased to say that this has been the least complicated, for the most part, most optimistic budget have ever developed here in my tenure at Bensalem Township School District. I haven't developed it. I've had partners and commitments and assistance, certainly from all of the cabinet and administrators throughout this process. Still more work to be done. Our budget cycle doesn't end till June 30th. I want to commend our teaching and learning team led by Mrs. Leon, our special education team, special services through Mr. Cohen, Mr. Camerano's IT group, and certainly our building administrators led by Dr. Velasquez for their help, assistance, and confidence as we navigate this process. And certainly Mr. Steffi and his team and operations and transportation, they've done a remarkable job, not just this budget cycle, but throughout the course of our collective tenures here in Bensalem Township School District. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank this board and previous boards who exhibited an incredible amount of patience, resolve, understanding, and curiosity throughout the entire budget development processes and cycles that span back for some board members to a decade and a half. So this may be a different feeling and sense of optimism and I hope continued confidence. However, we still have work to do. The pandemic has impacted our budget, may continue to impact our budget. Macroeconomics, economy in general, always impacts school district budgets. And we sometimes benefit, but more often than not are hurt by some decisions and economic conditions. Along those lines, some additional context and perspective. related to budget development. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania invests in its students 45th out of 50 states in the United States. They're ranked 45th in investment to public education in straight dollars. Of course, ESSERS plays a part in our budget development process. ESSERS is a COVID-related term. It is the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Fund Relief. We have benefited by ESSERS through approximately $19 million, John, in aggregate, and we anticipate that benefit to supplement and enhance our budget, subsequently opportunities and options for our kids through the next 4 budget years. And our PA Future Ready, that is the Pennsylvania Department of Education performance indices that we are judged by, that we subscribe to, and that we connect our programming to. Charter schools, PEACers, which is our pension system, and special education. Those 3 cost centers represent 42% of our general fund budget. Those 3 cost centers we have little to no control over. The 1.11% at the bottom of this screen represents cost increases to the general fund budget from the 2014-15 year through 2020-21. That's last June. If you back out charter schools, special education, and pension cost increases. So if you take away those cost centers, the Bensalem Township School District has only increased expenses on average for those years 1.11%. I commend my colleagues, I commend the board, and I commend the community on incredible financial stewardship. Again, going back to the macro, things we can't control. And some comparables. Ohio has a state, our neighbor to the west, has a flat statewide cyber tuition rate of $6,020, in market contrast with our $8,900 to $23,000 tuition based on sending district costs. Our charter school costs are approximately $13,000 for a regular education student to $35,000 for a special education student. I will say this to our board, I will say this to our colleagues, and I'm going to say this to our community. There is a straight line from excessive cyber tuition to local property tax increases. We are active in Harrisburg, advocating for some type of change or reform to our current charter school codes, which were enacted in 1998, almost 25 years ago, with no change. The budget presented to you tonight provides for safe schools, warm, safe, and dry, transportation, academics, arts, athletics, student supports, co-curriculars at our high school, 4 academy programs, 30 career pathways, 23 AP courses, STEM, and professional development. That is just a sampling of what this budget supports. We rely on our comprehensive plan to inform our spending commitments and where the money goes and what it expressly and explicitly supports. There are 4 pillars in our plan: achievement and access, culture, human capital, and infrastructure. Achievement and access, program and process drivers, focus areas, and accolades include, and I mentioned this earlier, PA Future Ready. We have been this year designated American Association of School Administrators Learning 2025 Demonstration District. We are one of a few select districts in the Commonwealth and the nation that had earned that designation. We also, and Mrs. Leon's heading up this work on the district's behalf, we are part of the systems design benchmarking process and program, which helps us understand how we're structured as it relates to student outcomes and achievement. We engaged in a 4-point study last year, you'll remember, which has supported and advised us on a number of different structures, components of our operation that we plan to take advantage of. This year, we brought 2 pre-K counts classrooms to our Faust Elementary. We are looking at options and opportunities to bring more. We've invested in, we doubled down on our multi-tiered system of student supports across our district. That's a process and program that helps our kids advance, recover, and grow academically and through social and emotional well-being. We are the beneficiary of the 21st Century Community Grant, Cohort 10 at our high school and Schaefer. Those programs are remarkable and well subscribed and wonderful for kids. We intend to apply for Cohort 11 for our elementary programs and for Snyder Middle School, and again, the high school. We invested in some supports for our ELA teachers across the district. We think that'll provide additional help and support through our professional partners and ultimately the kids. We're in the middle of a math resource review. We are poised to transition to the next generation science standards. We are working through some school scheduling reviews and ultimately hope to transition to new schedules. We have been named Best Communities for Music Education in both 2020 and 2021, and we are a Marine Corps Junior ROTC Naval Honor School. That is a remarkable recognition, and it's national. I could go on, but as you know, pictures are worth 1,000 words. These are some examples of student successes, district resources, and commitment supporting those successes. You see before you some wrestling honorees, our Best Communities for Music Education moniker. Our Athletic Hall of Fame induction was held in January. That's a testament to the quality, the community, and culture of our district and successes of our students as they advance beyond us. You see the celebration in our high school for our ROTC program. Katie Ho, who you met indirectly and will meet in person last week, is a National Merit Scholarship finalist, and a montage of our 21st Century Community Learning Center camp. First Lego League robotics demo in Reveal was Thursday night. I'm optimistic that our kids will perform well, and I'm assured that they're going to learn a lot and have more fun than anything. Grease was our drama performance this year. It was phenomenal. The talent is impressive and Broadway-esque, and I know it was well attended and received rave reviews. Our Distributive Education Club of America, DECA, is a standard bearer at our high school. They traditionally and historically advanced numerous kids to regional, states, and even nationals. And these are some of the tools that we use to inform our processes and our continuous improvement. MTSS, our 4 points review, reading routines. It's one of the volumes of my view, my perspectives. Linkit helps us, will help us manage our student data. It's a very dynamic tool that we hope will advance our professional acumen and ultimately our students' achievement levels. And top right-hand corner, that's the benchmarking program we're involved in. A little more in our toolbox here. You see at the top left, that's a trophy case for our robotics program. Top right is our neuroscience professional development. It's been with us since 2015. And our Ben Salem for Life, that is our administrative, Bible. This is something we instituted. Dr. Velasquez headed that up to document, highlight, and archive our communications, our process, in the interest of systemic coherence, all with an eye to advance our kids. A few more slides depicting accomplishment. Our 1,000-point scorer, Aaron Sanders, a very good basketball player. To the right, our Suburban One championship basketball team. Iders, Snyder Owl Soccer this fall ran the table, 8-0. Bottom middle is one of our student athletes who committed to go to school and pitch at St. Joe's University. And to the left, you met Shayna Kearney, our state all-state cross-country and track runner, and I really like the top middle. That's a picture of the scoreboard from our homecoming game. It was a good day to be an Owl. We were down 12-0 at the end of the first quarter. Culture, our comprehensive plan, policy, and administrative regulation review provide a roadmap, direction, policies, and structure, predictability, and compliance, all enhancing culture. Act 18, safety and security compliance, a massive focus on that to keep all of us safe, healthy, and well, and comfortable. This board has invested in partnerships with Southeastern Pennsylvania for additional student support. You've invested in additional guidance counselors. You've invested in Talking Points, which is a tool to help us better and more frequently communicate with families. We've began online registration this year. We've focused and refocused and enhanced our community outreach processes and programs. And of course, you heard about our neuroscience think tank. Again, pictures are worth 1,000 words. Our performances at Neshaminy Mall, holiday performances throughout the district. Again, Grease, that's up there twice for a reason. Was that good? And Belmont Hills Valley Orchestra. You can see some of our high school events. The top depicts a group of our Hispanic students celebrating Hispanic Cultural Month. Bottom left is our student section and our football games. By the way, this fall, it was a tough ticket to get at Ben Salem High School Memorial Stadium. And bottom right, you all know, Deputy Director now, Richardson, the field hockey team had a fundraiser on his behalf. He was suffering with and through cancer, and it was a remarkable night for not only the Richardsons, but the Ben Salem community. And human capital, we're committed to hiring the best talent. We continue to communicate vacancies broadly. We've reorganized our district administration in the interest to be as efficient as we possibly can, as responsive and best positioned to support students, teachers across the entire district. We believe we have fair labor agreements. We are currently in a search for our Ben Salem High School principal Principal Ferreira is committed to retiring after this year. We have engaged a new HR director to start May 1st. He's with us tonight. Welcome, Joe. Thank you. We are in year one of Act 13 teacher evaluation implementation. We engage additional English language learner teachers. We continue to engage and employ instructional coaches to advance our own professional acumen. We have English learners and federal programs coordinators. We did not have that before. Again, it lends to more efficient, more responsive, and better position to support students. And of course, you heard we invested in additional supports for student well-being through Southeast PA Council and the additional guidance counselors. And again, pictures of our staff development day recently on the top left-hand corner. Top right-hand corner is yours truly with Acting Principal Copestick on the right and Assistant Principal Scott Pratt at Valley on the left. They are recent graduates of the Bucks County Intermediate Unit Leadership Development Team. We began that process in collaboration with all the other Bucks districts with facilitation from the IU. I participate, all the superintendents do, to grow our leaders from within. We've had 10 graduates. I think 6 or 7 are currently employed as administrators, all but one here in our district. So it's a really valuable tool for us to grow our team and capacity. And of course, well, not only do you meet Joe through the presentation, but you get to say hello to him in person tonight. So welcome, Joe. Infrastructure, we are the beneficiary and have been awarded the Electronic Connectivity Fund grant. Thank you, Nick, for your work on that. We are in receipt and have been of ICS capital planning recommendations, which drive our capital planning process. I think our budgeting process has been very good and continues to support us in everything we do and stand for. The district has invested. I don't know if I should use investment because it's no upfront cost, but committed to bus patrol, which will help with our transportation team. We are in the process of an e-finance upgrade. That's the software that supports our back end. We've refinanced debt service several times to the savings of, last time it was $1.5 million plus, John, and we've done that, and we expect and anticipate another opportunity shortly. We've Valley's gotten a new roof. This is just this past year. Cornwall's boilers and rooftop units have been swapped out and are functioning incredibly well. And we also invested in our high school track. And in years past, we upgraded our transportation fleet, 30 brand new buses and several vans. 20, thank you. And again, a visual depiction of our investment in our physical plant and our overall infrastructure. And for this, the board is to be commended. And this is our why. This is why we do what we do. I'd like to point out President Price and his son Matthew. What a great moment for you guys in our community.
My last one.
I know how that feels. So that's a few remarks, a little bit state of the district, and a little bit introduction, a little bit about what we have committed to through our comprehensive plan, and you'll see more of the comp plan at our March board work session, committee of the whole work session. So it's my pleasure to cede the floor in the proceedings to my colleague John Steffi.
Sam, can you scroll through the presentation? All right, thank you. Okay. First page, 2021 school year had very positive results. Our total expenditures were at 151,777,000. Total revenues of 157,454,000, which resulted in an increase of our fund balance of $5,677,000. This was the largest increase probably in the last 15 years for the school district in terms of fund balance. Some of this was due to COVID. On the next slide, you'll see what we've done is we've backed out the COVID-related expenses that we had last year. And we've also backed out the COVID-related revenues. So last year, going with the same $151,700,000 of expenses, we had $1,729,000 worth of COVID-related expenses. Masks, sanitizer, we spent it on the ionizers for the bus misting system, different educational equipment, cleaning musical instruments, the whole 9 yards, the desanitation machines, the Clorox machines. That all totaled approximately $1.73 million. So total expenditures when backing out the COVID turned into $150,048,000. Again, our total revenues were $157,454,000. We received $2,424,000 worth of COVID-related revenues. CARES money, we received $700,000 from the county and various other smaller amounts from the federal government. That reduced our total recurring revenues to $155,030,000. So even backing out the COVID, the district had an increase of $4.98 million, or just under $5 million in our reserves last year, which is an unbelievable year, better than what like I said, we've had over the last 15 years. Go right ahead.
Well, my one question with looking at that, it says revenues for COVID related was 2.4 million, and I know we got way more than $2 million. So this is just the smaller batches of money, because I know all in total we're over, we're over 10?
It's probably
over?
going to be close to 20. Yeah.
Okay.
But this is for the 2021 school year, and that first year, during the first year of COVID, we got a smaller amount. We're using that large amount over the next 3 years, this year, next year, and the following year. And some of those monies that we're getting, and we're going to have a full presentation because it's a very important part of the budget, is all this COVID money. We're using a lot of that COVID money to offset our costs. Some of that COVID money is to offset non-recurring costs. So I think it's important for the board to understand what's being used to offset recurring costs and what's being used to offset non-recurring costs, so you can plan accordingly, because in 4 years, you're not going to have this federal money, a large part of it. So you have to plan for when 4 years from now, how you're going to make up that amount of money that you no longer have to offset these costs.
Okay, yeah, those are the ones that I'm mainly concerned about, especially the recurring, because I know there was some talk about some employees being hired with that money, and if that's something we're going to be keeping around, that's something we need to account for moving forward. So while this is all nice and pretty, there's always more to it, but go ahead.
Well, just to let you know, we haven't dedicated, at least I haven't dedicated any of the ESSER funds towards employees. We've, if you recall, we had the discussion, we're applying our ESSER funding to our IDA-related costs. That is a recurring cost, though. It's our special ed cost through the IU. And we have letters from PDE allowing us to utilize our funds in that manner. So that'll give the board greater flexibility. It's going to continue to raise your reserves.
Continues to raise them until we
So you don't have them.
And then we pull it out of our reserves.
Correct.
Pay for
Or
it.
one of the things you'll see later in the presentation is recommendation is to gradually increase your taxes over the next 3 years in order to fill that void.
You're going to offset the 19 million over 4 years with a gradual tax increase that is equivalent to that 19 million anniversary. Is that the intent of what you just said?
Well, we're getting that 19 million, but part of that 19 million is offsetting non-recurring costs. We're using about $4.7 million of that 19 million for a 3-year period. So the amount you'll have to make up is at 4.7 million. So if you have a tax increase, a 50% tax increase, not half of what you're allowed to go up, not 50%. Like when I say when I say 50%, you're allowed under Act 1 to go up 3.5%. So instead of going up the full 3.5%, maybe you go up 1.75%. And then you do that for 3 years, and that'll more than make up that 4.7 million. Now, you still have to make up, you have a teacher's contract coming up, you have increasing costs, so you have to make up that deficit plus whatever your costs increase. You also get more funding. We're anticipating a pretty healthy funding this year.
That would be nice, but as we've learned, you can't count on that.
Well, last year we budgeted zero increase and we got well over $1 million after July 1. Okay. Just a rehashing of our history. Going back to June 30th, 2012, our fund balance at that time was $31,470,000. Fast forward 7 years, our fund balance was reduced to $14,586,000. So over the 7-year period, the district drew down almost $17 million, or 54% of our fund balance. Worst. Oh, that's the year that for the 17-18 that we reduced, we cut. To get our Oh, I'm sorry. Just keep this thing on. Fast forward again to June 30th, 2021. We now have a fund balance of $22,057,000. That's an increase of $7.47 million over the past 2 years. And if you go back to even the 2018-2019 school year, it shows a draw on fund balance, but that's a little bit of an aberration due to the fact that that year we bought 33 school buses for $2.91 million. So had it not been for that one-time purchase, district had recurring revenues over recurring expenditures of over close to $800,000. So for the past 3 years, our district has been adding to fund balance through operations, which is a big deviation from the past 6 years where we drew down close to $17 million. Next slide is just a graph of our fund balance history. You can see the 31.5 million in the 11-12. You can see it going down, 18-19 even further, and then the next couple of years we've bumped it back up. Next slide, please. And this is just showing from recurring operations. We lost from 11-12 to 17-18, a 6-year period, $14.778 million. When you adjust it, like I said, 18-19 we actually had a gain, and 19-20 we added 1.79 million, and this year 4.98 million from operations. And the unadjusted you can see to the right, and you can see why we adjusted it. We adjusted it for the buses, and we adjusted it to account for COVID revenues and expenditures. The next slide I apologize for, but it's impossible to fit everything, and I wanted to show you our total local revenues on one slide, our total local state revenues, and our total federal revenues. And by far the largest slide is our local revenues, and it's made up of all these different lines. So I apologize, and it's very hard to follow, and it's very busy, but I thought it would be better to have it on one page. It'd be easier to follow. Okay. I just wanted to go over a couple of the lines. The first one you can see is real estate tax revenue, by far our largest revenue line. You can see this year we had budgeted $99,696,000. If we have no increase in taxes, we're projecting that to go up several $100,000. And that's due, in fact, to we've had a little bit of a bounce back from our total assessments. So without even doing anything to millage, we're going to get several $100,000 more because our tax base grew. If you were to go at one half of the increase, you can see that it's about $1.7 million. And if you go at the full tax increase of the 3.5%, you can see it's about $3.4 million. For those of you who were on the board previously, you remember our budget meetings from the past couple years, all the doom and gloom that we heard from PASBO, from PSBA, from just about every organization about how it was going to affect our revenues going forward. I'm happy to report it didn't affect them as much as what everybody said. You can see a big one, our business privilege tax. We have eCollect, who collects our business privilege tax. That was the one thing we were concerned about. They had projected close to $1 million reduction in our business privilege tax. That never came to fruition. You can see we actually got our business privilege tax increased. We had budgeted $4.8 million for, I'm sorry, a little over $4 million for 2021, and we got over $5 million. You can see 21-22, we budgeted to 4.1, and we're trending well over $5 million again this year. So that's great news for us. Those COVID-related reductions did not come to fruition for our business privilege tax. Our delinquents are up, which may or may not be a good thing. A big one that we're drawing down is medical access. You can see that federal revenue received from other PA public schools. That's through the IU. Our numbers are way up there. Mr. Cohen's smiling. We're using that to offset our IDEA expenditures, and we anticipate we'll be able to do that at least for the next several years. Federal IDA pass-through, this is a normal recurring federal revenue that runs through the IU that we're required to report in our local revenues. You can see the next one, federal CARES pass-through. That's the money that we got from Bucks County, that's $700,000. That was one time. We spent all that money. You recall we spent it on the bus misting system, the ionizers, and masks and things of that nature. And I think everything else is pretty normal. Not a lot of strange variations. Any questions on the local revenues? Okay. So next thing I wanted to show you is the 2-year assessment history. One thing that happens in Bensalem, we're a higher concentration of commercial, industrial property than your normal school district in Bucks County. When the economy is doing well, our total assessments do better than most of the other districts. When the economy is not doing as well, we suffer a little bit more, and you can see that was the case here. If I would say anything about COVID, this is the one area where it has affected us. The good news is almost all of our major taxpayers, the large ones, parks, Betts Labs, the Chamonix Mall, they've all received substantial reductions in their taxable assessments. I don't see any large, nothing like we've seen in the past couple of years coming through and affecting our taxable assessments. So we've taken a hit. We've come back a little bit. You can see we lost close to $9 million in taxable assessments. So far this year, we're up $1.5 million. You can see we're down $7.5 million in total assessed value.
Can you explain that we lost 9 million in assessments, not 9 million in dollars?
Yeah, the 9 mil.
I hear people freaking out.
The 9 million in assessments is multiplied. It is. The nine. Oh,
He was, because I asked Mr. Steffi to explain that it's 9 million in assessments, not 9 million in revenue dollars.
so the 9 million in assessments is applied to the millage rate. Your millage rate is 164.95. So basically, it's about 16.9% of $9 million that you've lost on an annual basis due to that reduction in your total assessed value. And like I said, when you take 16%, almost 17% of the 1.5 million, that's where you get the several $100,000 increase in your real estate tax revenues.
With assessments, I mean, if the economy improves, if there's, then we can increase our base. Of course, if the economy decreases, you're going to have more companies coming in to lower their taxes. And that's what happened within the Chamonix Mall.
That's what, yeah, but
Right.
the one thing I said that is good, probably our 4 largest taxpayers are the ones that reduced in the last couple of years. So hopefully there's not a big one coming up anytime
So
soon.
Parks builds that hotel,
Parks
and
was-
and then we can
Yeah, that'd
raise
be
them a little
great.
bit.
Yeah. So you can see we lost over the last 2 years 7.5 million in assessed value. There's only one other district who lost, and that was Morrisville, and they only lost 163,000. So, but like I said, when things are going good, we're outpacing most, if not all, the districts. There's been some years where our assessed value has gone up more than any district. So, this is not a norm. Hopefully, the economy turns around and we'll start building back up. Dr. Lee asked me to include, I guess there was an article in the Courier over the weekend where you can move your mouse over different school districts and see what their average tax bill was, what their millage rate was. So we just thought we'd put it in a graph format, a graph and a chart, so you can see where we stand compared to the rest of the county. You can see Morrisville has the highest millage rate in the county at 232. We're somewhere in the middle, a little bit above middle. We're at 164.9508. And you can see the district at the very bottom, which is the wealthiest, one of the wealthiest, if not the wealthiest, New Hope, at 108. Now, the one thing I do want to caution you on, though, is just looking at the millage rates, because there are school districts that have earned income. Central Bucks has earned income. I think they get somewhere close to $30 million for the school district. If our district had earned income, our millage rate would be considerably less. Council Rock has something called the occupational assessment tax. I think they got $4 or $5 million for that. So there's other taxes where their residents are paying taxes, and it's allowing them to lower their real estate tax rate. So this is not just, I mean, you'd have to go through everybody's budget and adjust it for those other taxes they have to get a true picture of what they're taxing their residents. So it's not just millage rate. I just wanted to make everybody aware. No, the Council Rock has occupational assessment. That's a very odd tax. There's probably only a handful of school districts in the entire state that have it. If you had it, you're allowed to grandfather it, but anybody who wants it now, it was outlawed. You can't do it anymore. And basically what it does, like I said, it's very odd. They'll assign, like they assign a value to a house, they assign a value to a person's job. So if you're a brain surgeon, your value may be $25,000. If you work at McDonald's, you may have $500. And then they assign a millage rate against your occupation. Yeah, it's very strange. It's very controversial, too.
Hey, Guys, 1 second. If you're going to talk, we have to use our mic so the people listening at home can hear us. So we want to make sure they're hearing our questions so they get a full understanding of what's going on. So, Heather, hit your mic.
Who else had earned income?
Uh,
Mentioned two.
well, I said Council Rock and
And-
Central Bucks
Oh, Central Bucks, okay.
as your earned income, but
And is it the same thing for Central Bucks then?
Yeah, they have, it's not.
That same odd tax?
No, theirs is an earned income.
Okay.
You're not allowed, school districts are not allowed to impose an earned income tax anymore. If you had it, say the district imposed one back in 2000, we would be splitting the earned income tax with the township. But Act 1 prohibited school districts from implementing that going forward. So if you had it, you could keep it. If you didn't have it, you can't implement it anymore. Thank you. Sure. This is just taking the millage rate times the average residential assessed value. So you can see New Hope, who had the lowest millage rate, but their houses are worth more than anybody in the county on average. So they have the highest average tax bill. I mean, Council Rock, you can see the wealthier districts have the higher average tax bills. And you can see Ben Salem, our average tax bill is third from the bottom.
John, I'm sorry. Could you explain the difference between assessed value and market value?
Sure. Assessed value, it's a little complicated. I don't know how. So back in 1972, the county assessed everybody's home. And if a house cost $30,000, then you had a $30,000 assessment. Go forward a year. That house that was for $30,000 now sold for $31,000. And what the state does is they have a place called the State Tax Equalization Board, and they create a ratio between the sale price and that original base year. And so going forward, each and every year, there's a different ratio. They'll take all the sales in the county. And I don't particularly agree with it because countywide, the price of homes don't move uniformly. So a house that was in Bristol Township that sold for $30,000 back in 1972, and a house in New Hope, Solebury, or Council Rock that sold for $30,000, the one in New Hope, Solebury, or Council Rock may be worth $500,000 or more, and the one in Bristol Township may be worth $200,000 or $300,000, but they still have that same assessed value. So what they do now is there's that ratio. It's about 10%. So if you buy a house today for $400,000, it's brand new, then they'll take that ratio, that 10% times the $400,000, and you'll get a $40,000 assessment. If you buy an existing home, you inherit whatever that assessment is. So new homes, they take the ratio and multiply it times the sale price. Existing homes, you inherit that. Now, one thing we do, we look at the sales for commercial properties and business properties. If we see a commercial property that is assessed at, say, $100,000, which would imply $1 million fair market value, and it sells for $2.5 million, well, we see there's $1.5 million they're being under assessed. So we'll contact our solicitor's office and say, we want to go and have our appraiser investigate and make sure that they're appraised at the right value, and they'll meet with them and they'll go back and forth, and sometimes they'll come up with an arrangement where they'll go up, and other times it'll be a battle between their appraiser and our appraiser. Okay. Next slide, please. So this is our state revenues. It's a little more legible because there's not as many lines as our local revenues. You can see most are pretty standard. The one that we show a big increase, our basic ed funding, you can see our 2021 and 21-22, what our budget, that 13.7 million. Well, the state approved their budget after July 1. We budgeted for no increase. The number that the state approved for us was $15.2 million. So that's approximately $1.5 million above what we had budgeted. So that's very good news for our story this year, because we're getting $1.5 million more than what we anticipated or what we budgeted for. We thought we were going to get some kind of increase, but I mean, we were very happy when we got 1.5 million more. We're looking at another substantial increase. Reason for this is the first time since I've been here, and one of the first times I've ever budgeted an increase based on the governor's budget. He's proposing an extra $6 million from Bensalem. We're not budgeting that much, but we're anticipating about a third of that, and there's several reasons why we're doing that. The first reason is their revenues are 14% higher already for 2021, and 21-22 is looking very good as well. So they're bringing in a lot more money than what they budgeted for. Number two, they have multiple billions of dollars in federal aid that there is a timeline that they have to spend that by. And school districts are going to get a piece of that money as well. Number three, we're very fortunate that, well, I don't want to say fortunate. The fair funding formula identified districts that were underfunded for years. Bensalem was one of those districts that has been identified as being underfunded. So any new money that comes through, they run through the fair funding formula, and that fair funding formula benefits us more than majority of school districts in Pennsylvania. So if you look at it, there's some school districts that they'll hold them harmless. They won't give them less, or they'll give them a minimum increase. The districts that are identified to be underfunded, like us, like Bristol Township, we got the two largest increases in Bucks County last year. And going forward, we anticipate that to continue to be the case because Bensalem and Bristol have been underfunded for years. So it's good news going forward. It's just bad news that we've been getting the short end of the stick for a long time.
Hey, John, how much of that anticipated are you actually going to put in as an increase, did you say?
I put 1.6 million in for basic ed and 600 for special ed.
Out of an anticipated how much?
6.6. It's about a third. And other than that, for all of our state revenues, they're relatively flat. The ones that increase from year to year are your basic ed subsidy and your special ed funding. You can see the one thing that we have less 1305, 1306 students, when what that means is tuitions, orphans that are placed in private homes or court placed. So the state reimburses you based on your tuition rate for students that you have that may be in a group home or they're placed in some type of agency. Number of students that we have in that is trending down. That's why you can see back in 17, 18, 18, 19, we were over 500,000, and now we're down to 160. That ebbs and flows, so I anticipate that that's going to start to ebb back up too as well.
John, one more follow-up question. Do you anticipate a finalization of that actual amount we're going to get prior to our ratification of the budget, or will it be after?
Your guess is as good as mine. It's been, I'd say, like 75% of the time they do approve the budget prior to June 30th. It's probably been about 25% of the time that they'll do it after July 1. So,
Because those numbers could dramatically change
yeah, they
our
could.
budget outlook.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think I'm typically very conservative, and I think I wouldn't put that in there if I didn't think there was a very good chance that the district was going to get that. Like I said, this is the first time I budgeted something without having a actual hard, firm number. And
I'm not saying you should do more. I think the number you picked was pretty good. But if we do get the full amount, you know, us things that we would do or vote yes or no to could depend on if we got that.
Oh yeah, definitely. If we know the number prior to June 30th, we'll let you guys know and we'll adjust this accordingly.
Yeah, we'll certainly keep keep you all informed. Some additional context. This is a big election year across the Commonwealth. In such years, historically, budgets get done on time. And we've had examples of that not happening, right? Yeah, and schools do well. Thank you.
The one thing I would say, the budgets typically get done before June 30th when they have a lot of money. And they have a lot of money. They typically fight a lot more when they don't have money. So this year, I would anticipate that we'll have a budget by June 30th.
I've been on the board some years and with John, and usually you're always conservative, and then we always do better. So this is an early look, and better days usually come when you give us that good news. Thank you.
Thank you. Next slide, state funding. This is just a repeat of what I just stated earlier. Governor's proposal would benefit the district approximately $6.6 million. We do not anticipate that amount of increase. Projections are close to for fiscal year 2021. PA has billions in unallocated federal revenues that must be spent in accordance with federal guidelines. Preliminary budget has approximately a third of the governor's recommended increase for Ben Salem, or approximately $2 million. And as I said earlier, the fair funding formula benefits Ben Salem due to being unfunded for years. All increase in state subsidy run through the formula benefiting our district. Slide, please. The governor's proposed special education budget. Our total this year is $4.639 million. The proposed special ed funding increase totals $5.254 million. Proposed increase is $615,000. Next slide, please. And this is just a breakdown of the basic ed funding proposal. You can see our current subsidy is approximately $15.2 million. Governor's Wolf, his budget proposal that he just made a few weeks ago, is proposing for our district $21,161,000, an increase of just under $6 million. Again, that would be fantastic if we would get this, because this is a recurring revenue. I don't believe we're going to get that much, but I think there's a good chance we're going to get a good chunk of it. Yep. Slide, please. Federal funds. The district has been awarded $16,233,461 in federal aid from ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. Now, there's other ESSERs, and budget presentation number 2 is going to go over all the different grants, all the different federal money that we're getting, how we're going to spend it, when we're going to spend it, and what's recurring expenditures, what's non-recurring expenditures. So hopefully everybody has a great idea on what our financial picture is going to be, what we're going to be looking at as far as having to make up in 4 years. District has until June 2023 to spend all the ESSER 2 funds and June 2024 to spend the ESSER 3 funds. The plan for federal funding is to spend it the same manner as the $1.3 million that we got in CARES funding. That was for the IDEA special ed. And that gives the board flexibility, because I know you're not supposed to do it, but the law stated you can use it for IDEA costs, and it basically offsets some of our existing costs. And there was a concern, but we got it in writing from PDE that we're allowed to do this. And so we've just forwarded that email around to everybody. So when we get audited in several years, we can pull that paper out and says, yes, this is allowable, and we're good. Next slide, please. Expenditure totals. You can see for 21-22, our total was $163,046,000. This year, the 22-23 is at $168,202,000. That's an increase of $5.15 million, or a percentage increase of 3.16%. Now, I went through and backed out all the federal money that we're getting, the one-time expenditures and the one-time revenues, and I think that's on the next page. It's approximately $1,138,000. When you back out the $1,138,000 off of the $5,155,000, our budget's gone up about 2.4%. Next slide, major increases, charter schools, healthcare, ARP ESSER grants. We're getting money for that. It's basically an in and out, and salaries. The one thing that's a surprise this year, our special ed budget actually went down this year. I think it was the first time I've ever seen that.
Maybe because there's a Cohen running it.
Our expenditure breakdown, you can see our 1,000. I apologize. I should have put a descriptor here. 1,000 means anything educationally related. This is your regular instruction. This is your special education. This is your area vocational technical school. This is your cyber school. This is anything that goes to pay for students in the classroom. Include your charter school costs as well. You can see that total is $105,644,000, or just under 63%. Your 2000 series, it's like a catch-all. They call that your support services. That includes your guidance counselors, librarians, social workers, your principals, your superintendent, your business office, your facilities department, transportation, HR, your health department. So it's sort of like a catch-all, everything the state requires you to put in these 2,000 objects. And that's another thing I wanted to touch. We have several new board members. The accounting coding system is prescribed by the Pennsylvania Department of Education. So every school district in the state of Pennsylvania uses these same numbers on how to record their expenditures. The 3,000 is other services. This is for your athletic department, your co-curricular department. For whatever reason, they include crossing guards in here, community outreach. I think that's about it. Oh, and your swimming pools. And your 5,000, that is your debt service. And we also have contingency. The one thing Pennsylvania School Code says is you're not supposed to exceed your budget. So something happens, boiler blows up or something unanticipated, we have money in contingency to transfer. We cannot spend it unless the board approves that transfer because, like I said, you have to code things in the proper accounts. We can't code things to where they don't belong. We can't move things unless you guys approve us moving it. So that's sort of, I don't want to say rainy day fund, but you don't want to have to reapprove a budget if there's an unanticipated expenditure. And every year we spend about 99% of what we have budgeted. We typically get about 101% of what we have budgeted for revenue. So if a budget shows, say, a $2 million deficit, well, in all reality, it's probably you're going to have a surplus. And the reason I say that, you're not going to spend the $168 million, and you're going to get a little bit more than that $165 million. So it's just the rule of conservatism when we do our budgets. So you can see the total for our debt service is approximately 10.8%. We had a slight bump this year for the AVTS debt service. So you can see that breakdown of all the different categories of that $168 million. Again, for our new board members, I wanted to give a breakdown of our charter. To our existing board members, they've seen this, but this is where all the kids are located for our charter schools. We're projecting them for next year. So we basically move all of our charter kids up, and we repeat kindergarten. So you can see special ed charters. So you can see the 10 kids that we had in 12th grade, they're currently in 11th grade. The 13, 14 kids that we have in 5th grade, they're currently in 4th grade and so forth. And like I said, we just repeat kindergarten. So you can see the total number of special ed charter kids and the total number of regular ed charter kids. And unfortunately, we're projecting an increase for next school year in the number of kids. Next slide, charter school cost history. You can see going back to 14-15, we're at 10.5 million. And you can see actual costs all the way up to 2021 of 17 million. You can see that $7 million increase over that time span. And I just put the change, and you can see it's pretty volatile. The change from year to year, up 2.4, up 1.4, up 1.8, down 250, up 250, up 1.27. You can see what we have budgeted this year. I think we may be a little bit short. It's not going to be that much short, but it's next year we see a pretty substantial increase in the number of kids. So that's why we're bumping that number up by $1.3 million.
John, excuse me, charter school tuition is based on our expenditures, not the particular charter schools, correct?
That's correct.
So if our budget goes up, charter school tuition goes up.
Correct.
Thank you.
Now, the one thing I do want to say, there's a calculation that PD requires every school district to complete in order to come up with your tuition rates. So they take your entire budget and they back out certain expenses. One of the expenses they back out are your federal expenditures. The one good thing with our ESSER money is we're using it to offset some of the costs that would normally go into this charter calculation. So we're using approximately $4.7 million in our ESSER money to offset that will now be taken out of the charter calculation. Every dollar we spend, we have to give the charters approximately 16%. So that ESSER money is going to save us well over $600,000.
John, that's this year, but in 4 years, when that money goes back in, their tuition's going to shoot up
Well,
by the same percentage, right?
You're exactly right, and that's why I did not include that in the calculation. So this is at 100%. So you're going to have breakage from that. So your actual cost is going to probably be $500,000 or more less. So when that ESSER money goes away, you'll have the correct amount budgeted.
And I'm sorry, just so I'm clear, so what you have on here is special ed and regular. The multipliers are different, and that multiplier is designated by the state?
No, well, the state designates how you calculate it. So, and it's a very unfair formula because a couple things. Number one, it's based on your budget, not your actual expenditures. Almost nobody spends their budget. So, but we have to pay the charters based on our budget. Number two, we have to pay them for special ed students. And in that cost calculation, you can have a student that costs our district $150,000. I can tell you the charters are not taking those students. They have a kid that costs $150,000. They'll say, "Oh, go to the Ben Sam. We can't accommodate you here."
But we budgeted that way so that the assumption that they would take that child?
No, we have to budget. Mr. Cohen could probably go into it a little bit better, but we budget for kids that we have. You have a kid who costs you $150,000, we have to pay it. Now, the charter will get a kid that has to have speech once a week. That kid may cost them an extra $2,000 or $3,000. So, but we have to pay them $35,000. So they're basically making $20,000+ because of the way the state, and that's what Dr. Lee was referring to. The calculation is so slanted in favor. Their cost for a special ed kid could be $3,000 or $4,000, and we're giving them an extra $25,000.
I was taking a longer path to get there, but thanks for getting us there.
And thank you for the question and the ultimate clarity for the good of the order. But I'll say that this board, this district, is one of 420 throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that has passed a resolution asking for charter school reform, and that being one of the major tenets of that reform, to special ed tuition for charter school students and cyber tuition. We know, because we have one, we have a cyber program, we know what it costs to run one. And we pay less for our in-district cyber students by far than we do our cyber charter students. So congratulations on that, and certainly our local members of the General Assembly support that. So we'll see what happens in Harrisburg.
Luckily, we do have a good charter school, you know, we do. It's just the numbers are not in our favor.
Next slide, please. This is Dr. Lee's favorite slide, the mandated increases. I dropped off the special ed because it also actually went down this year, but we put Peasers and charter. You can see an 11-12. I went back even a little further than Dr. Lee did. We went back to 2011-12. Peasers, we spent $4,387,000. We spent $117,649,000 that year. So Peasers accounted for 3.73% of our budget. Fast forward, Peasers now accounts for 12.57, almost quadrupled. Increase from 4.3 million to over 20 million, a $15 million increase. Same thing with charter, not quite as much as Peasers, but we spent $6.2 million in 11-12, which was 5%, a little over 5% of our budget. Fast forward to 2021, it's just under 11%, or 17.5 million, an $11,262,000 increase. Everything else, you back out charters and Peasers, and everything else went up $15 million. And charters and Peasers went up $28 million. So you can see more and more money is moving away from the students in Bensalem and going towards Peasers and charter schools.
Does that correlate with the amount of students that are charter school students and identified in Peasers category, or is that, like, could you show the ratio of how that number that was 4.3 million back in 2011 versus the 20 million now, or the 6 versus the 17? Is there a number of students that correlates with the per student number that hasn't changed much, or did we dive into that detail?
The charters have gone up, but the number of kids in Bensalem hasn't changed that much. I mean, we're around 6,300, and that's where we were back. Yeah, but the charter numbers are higher though. So again, the money that is spent on those 6,300 kids is lesser of a percentage because of those other cost centers.
When did they go, roughly, what year did they go to 9th to 12th? How long ago was that? It was not that long
It
ago.
was like 4 years ago, 5
Right.
years ago.
So there's part of the increase, too,
Yeah,
right there.
They scaled from
Right.
K to 5, and then middle, and then up to
Right.
a high school, yeah.
Their high school does not really contain many of our students, though. Ours tend to come back to our high school.
Especially with the renovation and, you know, with the amazing stuff that's going on in the high school.
The next slide is just another illustration or chart on those mandated increases and the change in the percentage of our total spend. Okay, next slide, please. 22-23 budget notes with no tax increase. Again, we're at 168.2. Our total revenues just under 166. I back out the contingency that is not targeted for any expenditure. So projected shortfall of $1,654,000 with no tax increase. And again, the one thing I would say, this is probably, well, I would estimate this to be closer to a surplus due to the fact that we spend about 99% of our budget, and we typically receive about 101%. So it's the best budget, best outlook that we've had, I don't know, last 10 years. Thing I would say is we have to start planning for 4 years from now. You're going to have to make up that $4.7 million that you're not going to be getting. So if you have a tax increase, your total expenditures don't change. Full tax increase gives you $169,487,000. You back out the contingency, and you have close to a $2 million surplus, $1,884,000. I'm not proposing that you do a full tax increase, but I would say you want to have smaller tax increases to come up to that $4 million plus dollars. This is with a full tax increase. So you can just take that in half. Instead of getting a 3.4, you're going to get 1.7, and that's going to show you with essentially almost a balanced budget then.
Well, back in the olden days when I first came on the board, the business manager at the time was putting money aside, and we would always say, why are you doing this? He said, because the cliff is coming, the cliff is coming. Well, the cliff came, and we're finally starting to see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. I don't want to get overly confident with this, but yeah, that's...
Hey, John, can I ask a question too? You said take this in half, then we'd pretty much be balanced. If the government passed the budget and we got the full amount and we did zero, we'd still be balanced, right?
Oh yeah, you'd have a big surplus. I mean, you're getting $6 million, and here you're gonna, like on this, if you do half, you're still gonna have a surplus, but it's helping to make up for the lost revenues that you're gonna have in 4 years. But if you get to $6 million, that more than makes up for it. You probably wouldn't have to do a tax increase for a few years. But no.
They
Okay.
should hear them.
The impact of the tax increase. The Act 1 limit is 3.5%. Our current millage is 164.9508. If you go with the full increase, the mills would be 170.724. Our median assessed residential property, that's the median, not the mean, is 22.8. Tax bill at the current mills would be 37.61. Tax bill at the increased mills is 38.93. So a 3.5% increase would cost the median taxpayer $132 more per year. Notes to the budget, attritional salary savings have not been included in the preliminary budget. So you have a teacher who's making 6 figures, retires, you replace that teacher with a teacher who's making $60,000. You have that breakage of about $40,000 plus the salary-related benefits. So typically every year we have several $100,000 to more dollars savings. So hopefully the budget picture gets better through those attritional savings. The governor's proposed revenue increases have been partially included in the revenue projections based on state revenue collections, large fiscal surplus, as well as increase received last year after July 1st. Partial increase is being included. And I also mentioned about the fair funding formula. Notes to the budget, debt service will have a minor increase offset by state subsidy. Workers' comp costs are still trending way down for 21-22. If you recall, back in, I think, 16-17 or 17-18, our workers' comp costs were close to $2 million. We're currently, for this year, under $400,000. So that's been a big improvement. We've been saving 7 figures off of that number. I know one of the things you're going to hear from the teachers, PFM came in and did that presentation. They just did trending. They did trending on your workers' comp costs. They did trending on your charter school costs. They did trending on all the cost centers. And it was an ugly picture. And we've had a lot of things go our way from that projection. And this is one of them, the workers' comp.
I think, John, you did some great work with that. You changed some carriers, and we got a lot of great decreases, as I remember.
Yeah,
when
we did a couple
that.
things.
did,
We
yeah.
changed carriers. We're more. It's not entirely self-funded. We're a high deductible plan, but we started. One of the things that we changed, I think, is a big help. Is we have modified duty. Previously, when a person is on workers' comp, when you sit home and you get your 66% non-taxable, plus you get a third of a sick day, you're actually bringing home more money than coming to work. So that's why people were staying home. So we bring them in, whether they can just do a few simple tasks, but get them back to work, and that's been a big help. Okay, what to expect from future years. District is in better shape financially than at any time in the previous 10 years. Fiscal pressures from charter schools and PSERS still exist. Fiscal pressure due to commercial assessment appeals continue, but the district's assessed values have bounced back somewhat at this time. Substantial fund balance increase is again projected for this school year. District's credit outlook has improved from a negative outlook, if you recall, several years ago. Moody's, I think we were AA, but we had a negative outlook. Now we have the same rating, but we have a positive outlook. So that should help us with our bond issues and interest rates. And the thing that they specifically look at is your reserves, if you're making money or if you're losing money. And the reason we had a negative outlook is we drew from fund balance for 6 years, and you can't do that. And they saw for the last couple of years that we've been increasing our fund balance, and so that's why the outlook changed from negative to positive. Administration recommends a gradual yearly increase in taxes to account for federal revenues that will be needed in the 24-25 school year. And next budget meeting is Monday, March 28th. We'll have departmental presentations from the following areas: technology, curriculum, special services, which include special education and pupil services, and our federal programs. The big one is going to be federal programs, because that's a lot of money, and it's going to go over what we're doing this year, what we're doing next year, and what we're doing the following year. And like I said, what's recurring, what's non-recurring, what's allowable, what's not allowable.
I had Nick had a pretty good presentation and request for the budget, so expect a stellar presentation
Yeah, I
from that
forgot
guy.
to add one of the major increases is technology too. I think
Because you ask for nothing, you get nothing.
I can tell you, haven't seen his budget presentation. He's a little more precise. You'll appreciate that.
Anybody have any other questions?
I do have a little statement. Thank you for a good presentation. I personally just want to state that, my total belief is not to raise any taxes. And, I've always, the Act One is a formula that I think the increases come from the state, where they are looking for all our tax entities to raise this 2 to 3%. That's how they factor their money in. So I've always been against Act One for that type of reason, and they, I feel they have that built in. I would like to see our, with this new great board we have now, I would like to, and our great administration, to do something not only to not raise taxes, to work on a slight decrease in our taxes. We would be unbelievable in the county, in the state, and in this country, that we should try to work not only on not raising taxes, but to work on some decreases. And I know it's tough to hear, but I feel and I know that we have the team that can come to that area. So especially with the board and our great administration. Thank you.
Okay, if nothing else, then that concludes our presentation.
And we have no public comment. And for the 4.3 executive session, the executive board did not meet in executive prior to this meeting. So there's no announcement there. And the upcoming board meeting dates. So instructional affairs will be meeting on March 1st. Personnel committee meeting March 8th. Business affairs on the 9th.
Talk to Kim.
So stand by. Potentially that could be changed. So track our website for any changes. Just now hearing about that. So committee of the whole will be the 16th. Public relations is tentative on the 17th. March 21st, we'll co-curriculum sports association meeting, and the 22nd is regular action meeting. The 23rd is the Ben Salem High School Hall of Fame committee, and the next budget work session is March 28th. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor, signify by saying aye. Nays. We're adjourned.